In our Good News reflection for today, we come upon this beautiful scene in the beginning of John chapter 13. And Jesus and his disciples were traveling for what would be the last time to Jerusalem. And they have come to celebrate the Passover. And this is just a really beautiful picture of Jesus' ministry. In chapter 13, verse 1, it says, "It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love." I think that is just a great verse. Listen to it again. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. So John sets this up, and he prefaces the rest of the story by saying that this is Jesus showing his love in full force to his disciples. Then he goes on. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," Peter says, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash your feet, you have no part in me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not every one of you were clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, and no messenger is greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Isn't that a beautiful story? A beautiful picture of Jesus and what true leadership in the kingdom of God looks like. You see, John prefaces it by saying that Jesus is going to show the full extent of his love. And he also prefaces it by saying that Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. So clearly, Jesus is a man full of authority. And yet, he does not lord that authority over others, tell them what to do, boss them around, or treat others like they are subservient to him. Instead, he does the opposite, and he demonstrates his love by serving his disciples. Now, we don't have a culture of foot washing here, so I feel like we can't really get how outrageous this action of Jesus's was. You see, Greeks in that time frame they wanted nothing to do with a servanthood in any manner, nothing to do with humility. However, Jews in the first century, they did value humility. However, they still upheld like societal roles and status. And so they expected a person that had a high status in society to still be humble, but not to move outside of the role that that status offered them. But here Jesus, by taking off his outer garment and by washing feet, took on the role of a slave or a servant, which was a subservient or status, a much significantly lower status than a teacher, rabbi, and certainly Lord. And so Jesus points out, rightly so, you call me teacher and Lord, for that is what I am. And he's showing us that serving is what he's called us to do. And that status is not something that we should seek. You should wash one another's feet. Well, so should we all get basins next time we're in church together and pour water over one another's feet? Well, I don't think that's really what Jesus is saying here. If we go back to the beginning, when John points out that Jesus was showing the full extent of his love, that's what he's calling us to do as well. We're not greater than Jesus, for he is our master. And the messenger is not greater than the one who sent him. So we are sent by God. And so if Jesus lowered himself to the status of a servant to wash the feet of his disciples, we too can serve others with great humility and set aside concerns about status and societal norms, and set those things aside and serve one another well. And by doing so, we will show one another the love that Christ has shared with us.